Welcome to Mattys Mental Health Podcast, aiming to spread awareness on mental health by sharing the real life stories. All right, I'm here with Ray Aziz. How are you doing this morning, Ray?
I'm great. How are you, Maddie?
Doing well. I'm doing well. Thank you for speaking with me this morning and volunteering your time to talk.
Oh, I'm happy to. I'm really excited.
I'm excited to be on. So we met recently in town at a comedy show through some mutual friends, and you had mentioned that you had checked out the show before and you wanted to come on and tell me a bit about your story. And I just want to say thank you for wanting to come on and being here.
Oh, it's my honor. Like I said, it was like a really cool moment for me because I had heard about it when I first moved here. And then I kind of knew you and didn't put two and two together. So it was pretty mind blowing when you're like, that's Maddie? Cool. Yeah.
Okay, very cool. Let's jump right into it. Just jump in wherever you'd like to start.
Ooh, okay. Well, yeah, like I mentioned to you during that conversation, I have obsessive compulsive disorder. And I guess we got on that topic because I was showing you a painting that I had done based on it. And yeah, I was like pretty proud of that one because I just kind of like went with the flow. And in the painting, there's like in the background some words that like a bunch of question marks and words that say like you tell me, and just like touching on how OCD is like in its essence like a doubting disease.
Interesting.
So, yeah, but do you want me to start at like the beginning? Where do you want it?
Well, I mean, just before we do, I'm curious, maybe we'll circle back around to it, but in terms of doubting, do you mean doubting yourself? Is that, or doubting, what do you mean by doubting? Doubting disease?
Yeah, so it's a broad, that's the thing about OCD is it's very insidious and you can doubt absolutely anything. So it's broad that way and people have different themes. There are some core themes that like a lot of people with OCD will like have, but it could really be anything. Like for me, mine is like doubting myself a lot or doubting my like thoughts even. The kind that I have is more like pure OCD. So it's like my compulsions. Do you know much about like
Pure, right to the source.
yeah.
None of that fake shit.
Yeah.
It's pure OCD.
Um yeah, so like with OCD, like the mechanics of it are you'll have like an intrusive thought or feeling. And some people have external compulsions, so they have to either check something like a door or, you know, like the classic like light switch, touch something or arrange something until it feels right. Like there's an OCD term called the just right feeling. And until it feels right, like you can't stop. My compulsions aren't outward, mine are thought based. So like I'll have to unthink an intrusive thought, or I'll have to like a big compulsion of mine is praying, and it will be like not even a real prayer. It'll just be like a recitation of certain words. And until I do that, like I will obsess, but I'm a lot better at that. It's just like letting the thought go by instead of undoing it through prayer.
Interesting.
But my first like, oh, sorry, to touch on your question of like doubting and why it's so like tricky to catch is that like you could have a theme, like, let's say your theme is around like obsessing about your sexuality, like that's a big theme people have. And it can be like if you're in your essence more straight, you might obsess about being gay. If you in your essence you're more gay, you might obsess about being straight. And it's like you're just constantly doubting. And then I think the trap is that you'll try to figure out what's true, but then your OCD has already morphed into another doubting thing. And then you might like your next theme might be I'm gonna harm someone. Like it's not it's the same mechanics, but it's like the themes can be anything. Anything. So it's a huge like waste of energy and a hugely tiring process to try to figure out each theme because it'll just morph into something else.
It sounds like a lot to deal with on a regular basis. I remember I talked to someone else. I think she had OCD as well.
Yeah.
But intrusive thoughts, um, like the thought comes in and that's like you talked about like kind of like unwinding. Imagine just, and you mentioned energy, that could take a lot of energy to navigate this.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I've been tired since I was like 11 years old. Truly, because that's probably around the first time I like really noticed it. Um, my mom got pretty sick around that age, like really sick. Uh, and she was a single mom and all of that. So my obsessions at that age were like, I remember really clearly telling her, like, my brain wants to kill you, but I don't. So I always like, and it would really scare me, right? Because like you're a child and like adults are scared of their brains, but I was like, yeah, 10 or 11 and distraught because it was like, I'm going to kill my mom. So I'd have to like confess. That's another theme with OCD is constant confession. Um, but she didn't know it was OCD because she also has it, but she didn't understand at the time. Like her generation, I guess, didn't like. Well, she didn't have like a name for it, but she it didn't scare her because like her brain works very similar to mine, or I work similar to her. But yeah, since age 11 until yeah now. Um, but I didn't get diagnosed until I was 23, which is quite common for people with OCD. It can take like 10 to 15 years to even reach out for help.
So, wow, when you were um, at that age,
Mm-hmm.
like, was that an intrusive thought that was like, I want to kill you, but my brain wants to kill, but I don't. Is that like your brain being like the intrusive thought of like that just coming in your mind?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. And I couldn't yeah, like when I really dive into it, it affected my life a lot because I couldn't go to like sleepovers um really ever because I'd be afraid. Like my brain would be running saying like you're gonna kill your friends, you're gonna kill your friends. Um and that's hard because I feel like I missed out on like I never went to like sleepaway camp, nothing, because it was just I was so scared of my brain. Um I couldn't be around knives as a kid. I couldn't even like be in the same room as them because I just have intrusive thoughts of like killing people. So that sucks.
Right.
But yeah, I'm a lot better now though. Obviously, like I know what's going on and I can just kind of ignore them more, but it can be hard for me to even sleep over at people's houses or more difficult is when we go like somewhere far. Like if we were like staying at like a hotel far or something, it's like it can get more activated that way.
Right. Like taken out of your regular environment.
Exactly. Yep. Mm-hmm.
I'm curious so from that would probably be the first time you noticed. Is that kind of what happened like around 10 or 11?
Yep. Yep.
And then how was that journey from like 11 to 23 getting diagnosed? Did you pick up on it before? Did you want to seek out for help? And even though you mentioned like 10 to 15 years, is it like, I'm curious, what makes it hard to reach out, or is it like confusion or
Shame.
shame?
Yeah. That's what I understand anyway from like, talking to other people or seeing documentaries and my own stories. Like like if you don't understand what's going on, it's really hard to admit to someone that you're thinking about killing people all the time. That's hard. Or like having or killing yourself or like some of these things are okay. That's the beauty of OCD is it's like ego dystonic. So it's like it goes against like what you'd actually ever want to do. Um so another
Mm.
theme that people struggle with is like, yeah, like I said, like sexuality, obsessions, harm, OCD, contamination. Um, a really big theme that causes obviously a lot of shame is like pedophilia OCD. So you obsess about that and like avoid children, and like obviously people don't want to reach out for help for that because they're like, I'm messed up, like I don't like. But something that's really helpful for anyone who struggles with that is that the difference is like an actual predator will go towards harming, and people with OCD will not even be around children, like they can't handle it. So it's like goes against like your heart, and it's like it's a bully. OCD is a bully. That's a good way to put it. So all that being said is people like don't reach out because there's so much shame around the themes. Yeah.
Yeah. I imagine it would just be like like the shame and like the confusion and like like you mentioned, like there must be like I'm really messed up. Like there must be something wrong with me, or if I'm like thinking about this shit, like these bad things, maybe I'm capable of them, or maybe I'm fucked up.
Yep. Yeah. Distorting thought and action is a big thing. Like thinking because I thought it, it's the same as doing it.
Mm.
And it's not. All brains have intrusive thoughts, right? The difference is that people with OCD will latch onto them and obsess and obsess and obsess. That's the thing. Yeah. Yep. Like I'm gonna get real honest and vulnerable with you, Matt, but I think it's important. Okay. I was telling a friend of mine that like one of my big themes was like incest OCD. So I would have to like, I would have intrusive thoughts about family members or like, and like really, it would really cause distress for me. And I was kind of grieving a little bit recently because I think of all of the years that I like avoided family members because of an illness or like didn't let myself like actually get to know them. And that's hard because it's like not something I chose, and like, you know, that sucks. I feel like I could have had better relationships if I didn't have those obsessions. And they weren't even like constant or anything. It's just like even you can just have one and then you like freak out.
That must have been tough.
Like even now admitting that, and I know it's an illness, I'm like, oh my God. Like the shame and the like insecurity comes up and stuff. Yeah.
Well, I think I think it's and this is my first time really learning about it. I had a few other people on that had OCD, but the first time like hearing this getting broke down in this way, and I think from what you've said so far, I think it's really important. Like
Mm-hmm.
even what you shared, like if there was like someone that didn't even know they had OCD yet, and they're in that journey between like 11 and 23 or any age really,
Mm-hmm.
just to be able to understand that it's like it's not them, and they could start
Yeah.
to um, address it.
Yeah. And that's why I'm like, I've always been open about having OCD because I really am a firm believer in like creating a space that's safe for other people to talk to me about things. But only very, very, very recently, like within the last month, have I even like admitted those themes. So I've had those since I was 11. I'm 30 this month. It's like you carry a lot for a long time. And something my therapist said was like, they have names for these themes because a lot of people have them, right? Like you're not the only one. Like they have categories for a reason. So I can like lower the shame of that at all. That's worth it to me.
What was it like getting diagnosed, or the leading up to that, where you're like, okay, I think I need to seek out help?
So I had a bit of I don't know how unique it is, but it wasn't like really my like a conscious choice. I had started a master's at OISE in Toronto for psychotherapy, which was like my childhood dream. This was like my dream school, my dream program. And I was in it for a month, and all of my OCD symptoms, like, and like I didn't understand it as much as I do now, but I like was hearing, this isn't necessarily OCD, but I was so stressed out that like I like couldn't function. And what really triggered it, actually, now that I think about it, is you have to take like an ethics course, obviously, because if you want to be a therapist, you need to be ethical or whatever. But that really triggered me because my intrusive thoughts that I didn't recognize as OCD were so loud, where it was like, you won't be ethical. Like, if you're a therapist, you're gonna like, all of my like harm stuff came out. Like, and I was like, I can't be a therapist if I can't be ethical. Like, um, I'm gonna put a pin in that because there's also like a subset called moral scrupulosity. So that kind of ties to that, where it's like anything you do, you analyze it if it was like perfectly moral or not, to the point where you can't function. Um,
Okay.
but I really like lost my mind, for lack of a better term, and my mom had to she was in Ottawa and she had to come to Toronto and like take me out of school. Then I moved back to Ottawa. So this is all around like I started school in September, obviously, and then it was out by like mid-October. And then I got really suicidal and depressed and um non-functioning, I guess. Oh, I'm missing a part. Okay. When she came to visit me at school, she took me to like the U of T um psychologist, and this was a really shitty memory for me because the psychologist like took one look at me and was like, this is like, I can't deal with her kind of thing. She has to go to a psychiatrist. And like it was just not in those words, but like she's like, this is out of my scope. Like she needs like higher up help, I guess. So then I saw a psychiatrist at U of T and he said, he was the first one to diagnose me with OCD. So I was like, yeah, 23. And then so it wasn't ever like I have a problem, I need to seek help at all. It was just kind of like I had to get help. Like someone else had to make that choice for me, I guess. Yeah. And then I came home to Ottawa. Was like, I think kind of catatonic. I don't know the word really, but like my mom, like I don't remember a lot of this period, but she like would say that she'd have a conversation with me or ask me something and I would just like freeze and I couldn't answer. And she's like, are you okay? Like I couldn't reply. Um, and a theme I had around then was that I didn't know how to speak English. Like it was like that doesn't make sense, obviously. Um, but I was struggling to comprehend. Like my comprehension was like lower because I was not well. Um, so that was a really hard time in my life. And I like was probably horizontal every day for like all day, every day. I mean, let me think about this. For like 4 months probably straight. Um, and that's the first time I went to like the psych emerge in Ottawa. It was November 2016 because Trump got elected that night. It was like actual election night, and I'm like sitting in the emerge being like, oh my god, this shit can't get worse. Uh, yeah, and then gained like probably 80 pounds, I would say, and then uh only recently, like, within the last 2 years, have I tried to like go back to like I guess where my body's comfortable. Um, but yeah, that was tough. Yeah.
You know, I know you mentioned that you were suicidal during this time, and sounds like very um, unwell.
Hmm.
How did you feel about like getting this diagnosis and um, like were you surprised or were you like um, overwhelmed? I mean, like, did you suspect that there was maybe something going on, or I guess what was like the emotion around that time
Yeah.
of getting diagnosed?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I always knew I had OCD for sure, just wasn't officially diagnosed. I was not thrilled. It's actually like burned in my memory because I felt like the main thing I was struggling with at that time was dissociation. Like I was trying to explain to the like doctor, like I don't feel real. And like that's bothering me more than OCD, but he was just like very fixated on the OCD, which is like fine. He's a professional. But I just felt like I was like kind of crying out in a way to be like, can you fix this thing? Because I'm like, just like, and I still struggle with dissociation every single day. But it's like, that was really the main thing that was really upsetting me. But I'm glad I went because he would like describe it in a way that I hadn't really thought of. Like, he was like, if you look at a tree, your brain will start to think like, what's a tree? Where did it come from? How, like, and he was fucking right. Like, I can't look at um like things without obsessing about like the reality of them. Like there's also like existential OCD. Like I think I have them all, honestly. So it is really hard for me to just like take life for granted, it's not the right word, but like just as is. Like
sounds like surface level. It's like, oh,
yeah,
there's a tree, but no, it's like there's the tree, there's the seed. Where'd the seed come from? Where'd the soil come from? How'd this all?
yeah, like I'm very obsessed with existentialism to the point where I'm not like actually living a life. I'm just thinking about living a life a lot.
Mm.
And like I remember I like something I remember quite well is like being like 16 or 17, writing in my diary and having the same feeling. And I didn't have the word for it at the time, but like a theme in my diaries would be like, I'm watching myself. I'm watching myself. Like I'm not 16. I'm watching myself be 16. Like I have to I would often like feel like I was performing how a 16-year-old should act. Like it's kind of hard to explain, but um I was definitely out of body from like a young age for sure. But that's like I was recently diagnosed with complex PTSD, and so I'm like that was quite validating because like that's just what that is.
I'm curious, like, um, how that plays out in life. So you mentioned like the tree example. So how is there any other examples of how that may show up in life with the dissociation or the existential?
Yeah. Yep. So a big one that I've been thinking about and kind of upset about is like, and this is how it shows up in my life. If I like don't feel real, which I don't, and I'm watching myself live a life, and like I'm obsessed about what I've done, like in reality versus like what I think I've done. Like it's just analyzing to like the nth degree. It's like what upsets me is like at the end of my life, like I don't even feel like I lived one. Like that, like I get obsessed about that. Or like, in the afterlife, if we believe in that, it's like I don't feel like I have a core essence. So like who would be there after? Like I can really spiral about thinking about that. And I also have was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, and that complicates it too because it's like one of the symptoms or one of the like things is like chronic sense of emptiness. So there isn't a lot rooting me to myself, I would say, which doesn't help. But all that being said, I am rooting myself more lately in like making art and dancing and painting and things that like I know bring me joy, even if I'm like dissociated and it feels like there's a wall between me and the activity. At least I'm making beautiful things at the end.
I was going to say you're a great dancer.
Thank you. Started dancing. Actually, that's probably most likely where some of this came from because I was in like a pre-professional program or pre-professional dance school from age 5 to 18.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and we trained ballet mostly. But we danced like 15 hours a week every week, every week until we graduated. And I don't know if you know much about like ballet culture, but it's very fat phobic, and you know there's definitely racist undertones. And being like a fat brown kid, the only fat brown kid in like an all white suburb, I got it different than like my peers did for sure. and you're staring at mirrors every day. Like I've actually been thinking about this. You're staring at mirrors like for 4 hours every night. Everything's like very particular. So I think that triggered some like always like watching yourself, analyzing yourself type stuff. But anyway,
Yeah.
yeah, tangent.
That makes sense because it like on some level that's kind of what it is. It's like analyzing yourself in every movement. Like that's the activity.
That's the activity. And like I was definitely picked on in the sense that like um it wasn't even about my dancing, it was just about how I looked because I was a really good turner and I was a really good jumper. And I remember like this one memory, I was like doing a triple pirouette with like my friend Mercedes and we were the same height. She's way taller than me now, but at this point in our lives, we were the same height. So we were opposite each other. And my teacher was like, really good job turning, Surraya, but you know exactly what I'm going to say. And I just knew, like, she was going to say, like, but you're too fat, basically. And I was like, yeah. Like, she didn't even have to finish her sentence. And I was like, yeah, I know what you're going to say. And then she was like, well, what are you doing about it? Anyway, so it's just like, that was like a daily thing.
Would she say that straight up, by the way? Like that? Would she like say,
Oh, yeah. Like, I was like, she would like grab my leg. Like, there's like, we would be at the bar, like doing tondus, and like, she would grab my leg and be like, there's too much meat here. That's the one that's like burned in my brain. Um, and she tried to get me on this like Bernstein diet, which is like injections or something when I was like 10. And my mom was like, there's no way.
injections?
Yeah, I think they injected with like B12 or something weird.
Wow. That's fucked
But I
up.
was a kid. This is the point of that. Like I wasn't old enough to be like making that decision. Um, but I had some healing moments because I knew she did it to all of us, like body shaming, but I just recently, like within the last 6 months, had some deep conversations with people I danced with that like they had it really hard too. Like one dancer was like active in her eating disorder and like um anyway, yeah, that's a whole can of worms.
Well, yeah, no, I think that's like that's crazy. That's just like um especially because that's like what I do. I help people I'm fitness coach, I help people lose weight, and it's just like such a terrible way to approach it, like to shame, especially children.
Yep.
It's
And
just yeah.
it's very common. Um because like they would defend it by saying it's like the aesthetic, and especially with ballet, like you're supposed to be reaching all these lines and stuff, and like it's a very like euro, like if you don't have like the quote unquote like white body type, like you're not gonna go far in ballet, at least that's at the time and what they told us. um I lost exactly what I was saying. Oh, but it has been like informed my teaching style because I've taught for like probably 7 years now, and I just have like a 180 of a teaching style. Like it's like I just I wouldn't dream or dare or want to do anything like that. And my friend who owns the dance studio now is the exact same way. Like she's like, I teach with like a totally different approach. So at least the next generation is doing a little bit better. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's yeah, it must just be that generation, I guess. I don't really know. Or maybe there's a culture of ballet or whatever, but that's just crazy. It's mind-boggling to me to like want to inject a 10-year-old so that she can go on some kind of diet.
Hmm. And like racial undertones too. Like she would be like, you could be on Broadway, but like play any sort of like ethnic character. Or like a big one for me was like we did the Nutcracker every year, like our studio. And I wouldn't even try to go for the lead. Like I would not apply myself because it was just it was like an unspoken rule that the lead would never be brown. It's like they'd have to be like the little white blonde kid. Like there's just like um anyway, back to OCD.
circling,
I'm
circling
like
back.
that. I could like talk about that for like 2 hours. So let's put a pin in that one.
All right. Yeah. So okay, so you get diagnosed, you're having a hard time. Um, where does it go from there?
Where does it go from there? So that was 2016. I went to the Civic Hospital, the Trump night, and then they didn't have any beds, which is very obviously common for hospitals really anywhere, I feel like. So they offered, like, that was November and I didn't get to go back. Like, they offered an outpatient program, and that wasn't until February. And I was pretty upset about that because I was, like I said, actively suicidal. And from like November to like February, you're just kind of like left on your own.
Yeah,
But
which
then,
is crazy.
yeah. So I
Three
went
months.
to an outpatient program. So just go there every day, take classes. Like, we had this whole like notebook, like our big like workbook thing. And it was good for me in terms of like routine. Um,
Was
yeah,
that
and I
like
met
November to February, by the way, or was that after was that started in February?
started in February. Yeah. Yeah. So then from there, I'm getting my timeline a bit mixed up, but I know in my Ottawa years, my most recent Ottawa years, I joined like 2 dance teams, and that brought a lot of happiness to me because one team like teaches for youth at risk and stuff, and that's like right up my alley. So I taught this like one group of teen girls that like are just like burned in my heart, and like I still talk to some of them because now they're like 20. Um, but I did that, and then I was volunteering with this company called Propeller, and it's a dance company in Ottawa uh, for folks with disabilities. So I was volunteering, and then I was really open about my mental illness. And the director um, reached out to me to do like a collaboration project with like psychiatric survivors of Ottawa and the Royal Ottawa. So we taught some classes, like did some workshops, made a piece. um, yeah, that was a good time in my life, like actually being a professional dancer. And then I was like hired to participate in like their show, and like Shara, the director, and I, like, I feel like we worked really well together because we both like, it was based on mental illness, and everyone for the most part who participated had lived experience, which I thought was really important. So it's like no one's like just like pretending to know what they're talking about or dancing about, I guess. Um and then COVID hit because we were going to tour it. So that's kind of where like that dance artistic journey is. Um, but recently, like in October, like the most recent in this journey is like I was in the hospital. I wasn't in the hospital, but I went to the Emerge at the QEH in October and was in like deep psychosis, like hadn't slept for a few days. And that was worse than like the 2015 one. So I think I'm just bouncing back from that right now. Mm-hmm.
Is there, I guess I kind of have like a two-part question.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything you attribute that, uh, like that episode 2 or psychosis 2, and then I guess the same, the second question would be like, it sounds like dance really helped you, but you talked a bit about like being able to let things go and stuff like that. Has there been anything that's really helped you during this time?
Yeah, it's a great question. Um, so what sparked that was I was having intrusive thoughts about my partner at the time, saying like you can't trust him, you can't trust him, you can't trust him, and then like really loud. And I thought that was just an OCD thought, so I was trying to let it go. But then it turned out he was lying to me for like a few months. Um, and like it kind of escalated before I knew he was lying to like I convinced myself that I was abusive because he had said like you can trust me, and I wasn't believing him. So then I like was like, you're abusive, Surraya, because people who don't trust their partners are abusive. Like it just spiraled, right? Of obsessions. So I wasn't sleeping. And then I had to go to the hospital. Like I was like, Mom, I need to go. So she took me And I was like, yeah, we don't, I guess, totally have to get into it, but I was just like inconsolable crying. And I don't think I've never been like that before or ever cried like that. And then I was really like out of it. Like I thought, I thought the nurse was there to like play a role of my dad. It was like a real, like, it makes zero sense. And I like was having this whole like kind of spiritual thing. And like, it's interesting because I've never done psychedelics, but like people have like had, I feel like had experiences like that where they're like going through like their lives, like anyway, whatever. I'm just, yeah.
It's all good. It's good.
Uh, and then what's helped me, okay, yeah. So I've been like kind of like a self-help hoarder since I was a teenager, and like got really into like Eckhart Tolle and stuff when I was in my early 20s. Um, so that's obviously kind of focused on letting go and being in the present and like fully accepting life, which I think is an amazing thing for OCD because um like, you know, the gold standard for OCD is like exposure response prevention. So like you're exposed to a trigger and then your anxiety goes up and you're not allowed to do your ritual and then your anxiety goes down. Um so that's great for external compulsions for sure. When you have like internal ones, like how am I going to really do that? Because my brain's like just like doing it, right? So sitting like the from what I understand, like um the kind of treatment plan is to just sit with uncertainty, which I think is quite Buddhist. Like you're just, instead of figuring it out, because life is uncertain, right? So it's like just being comfortable with that feeling that is really uncomfortable for anyone, but like really loud when you have OCD for sure. Yeah, so just being in flow, not like, you know, not guilt tripping myself when I do have a good time or a fun time. And really trying not to obsess about if I actually had a fun time. It's tiring having my brain for sure. um, but what's bringing me a lot of happiness right now is like, yeah, painting, sharing art, like painting jackets that people can wear and like, you know, yeah, bringing happiness through like art mediums for sure.
That's awesome. And I've seen your work. It's beautiful, by the way. And you showed me that time. Maybe I'll get a jacket sometime.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
thank you, Maddie. I
Yeah.
like that you like it. I appreciate that.
Um, just going back a little bit there, you mentioned like getting into self-help. What was the name of the just someone's name that you got into, like an author, was it?
Yeah, so Eckhart Tolle, he wrote The Power of Now, and like I
Yeah.
have a very spiritual crush on this man because yeah, I feel like I'm like him. Like he went through like depression is what like shot him into the present. So he like was gonna, he was actually around like my age, I think, like 30. Now he's like, I think over 50, but he wanted to like kill himself. And then he describes in his book, but he like felt like he fell through like a vortex and woke up and then he was like really in the present and then just like sat on benches and stared at nature for like 2 years. Like that was his thing. Um, so I'm more drawn to that. And then there's like another person, Ram Dass, who also kind of speaks to the same stuff, but he went like more like the psychedelics route. And I find that really interesting because I can like, from my experience, people who are really into spirituality kind of fall into those two categories. Like psychedelics kind of open their eyes or like depression.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, so then and like, so Buddhism has helped a lot too for me, um, to ground myself and like kind of remember that, like something that does really help me is like thinking that before we came here, this is going to get really spiritual for a sec.
Sure, go
Um,
ahead. I love it.
we like kind of have our karmic lessons, right? Um, and just remembering that like there's a part of us that like signed up for it maybe. And I mean, you just have to learn what you have to learn to like ascend in a different way. And like, it's not so heavy if you just uh look at it that way, for me anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, it almost sounds like like surrendering to what is.
It's all you can ever do, right? Eckhart Tolle has a quote, and I'm paraphrasing, but it's like something along the lines of like, if you can wait, if you can change it, don't worry. If you can't change it, don't worry. Like all else is insanity, basically. And that's
Yeah.
so true, right? Like you're only ever able to do like you only ever have this moment, and um surrender is like the key, I think.
Um, so the power of now, Ram Dass, Buddhism. I know that I think there's meditation in Buddhism. I haven't read books by those other two or the Power of Now book. So is meditation something you practice?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, every day. Um yeah. And just kind of watching uh just yeah, they call it like staying in the witness, like just witnessing what's going on. Um yeah. But it is a practice, and it is a muscle that you have to like work on every day, because like it's not, you're not going to be like, and you can't like win meditation, like it's not like a goal thing, you
Yeah.
just like
Yeah.
do it. But some people like will say they're bad at it or whatever, which doesn't exist. You just have to like focus. It's just working on like uh what's the word, yeah, focus. But it's not the word I'm trying to look for, but yeah, like anyway, I forget. I can't. My
It's
brain
okay.
is like, oh my god, I haven't been up before noon in a while. But
Yeah. No, this like to observe your thoughts without judgment.
yeah, that's the key. Yeah.
In meditation, I've heard it been broken down like that, and
Hmm.
by many different people. And I think it just kind of relates to what you're saying, but I think it's so powerful. Like obviously um, for anyone, to be able to understand that you are not your thoughts and being able to separate yourself from them and just observe them without judgment.
And without personalizing them.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I don't know, if you get really into it, like we're all just a conglomeration of our like conditioning and like, what we've like learned behavior. And it's like, it's much more powerful and beautiful to like actually just sit with your soul and like see what it wants to do, instead of like what you're like conditioned to do.
There's a good book I like on this. It's called The Surrender Experiment. I'm not sure if you ever heard of it.
No, but that sounds awesome.
It's a really good one. It's kind of like a guy that tells a story of his life, but he got really into meditation in his early 20s. A bunch of crazy stuff happened in his life. He ended up making like $1 million software company and all this stuff. But like somewhere in his early 20s, he just kind of like he was sitting around, kind of realized like there was just this constant chatter in his head.
Hmm.
And he got obsessed with that. He's like, why is this just a constant chatter? And it's like we all have it, right? It's like the constant flow of thoughts going through your mind at all times. And he read all the books he could on it, and he couldn't find it. And he found this one book on it, and it described as that. And he like got into meditation. This was like the 60s or 70s, right? So it wasn't like as readily available as it is today.
Yeah.
And anyway, he the way he described it was they broke it down in that book. It really turned me on, especially when I was just getting into this, was like you know, um just that separation. You are not your thoughts because someone is observing the thoughts,
That's it. That's it.
and that's you. And that's like I think like Buddhism has a name for that. I think like every religion has a name for that, but it's like the
Hmm.
divine you, or like the real you. It's your intuition. It's the one that knows it's deep down in your heart. You know what you should do. You should go right instead of left, or you feel like you should do something. And that's the one that watches the thoughts. And that's like
Yeah.
the real you. So meditation, sitting, getting into that, and just observing.
That's awesome. Yes, you're right. And that's like something Eckhart Tolle it was that exact kind of realization that he was like, it was something like, oh, okay. He was thinking to himself, I can't live with myself anymore. And then that opened his eyes because like I and me basically, and like how there was two. So he's like, if I can't live with myself, who's the myself? And like, yeah, same theme. Like, yeah. Yep.
Makes a lot of sense. I don't know, like, I don't have OCD, but I just remember even just like my whole life having a lot of thoughts and feeling like I needed to go like work them out. I'm having all these thoughts and I got
Right.
to go like go on a track and go for a walk and work them out. The times I was going through things, and then it's like you find meditation, you're like, oh, these actually aren't me. I always attach myself to the thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a human thing to do for sure. There's another writer I want to mention. Um, or sorry, a book I want to mention. I can't exactly remember who writes it. But it's called Wherever You Go, There You Are. And I really like that one. Um, who the heck writes that? Can't remember.
It's probably the only book with that title.
Yeah. Um, and there's a documentary, not a documentary, but like a YouTube video that's very accessible for anyone who may think they have OCD to learn more. But it helped me a lot when I was like really going through it because there's a lot of hope in it. But I think I'll shoot that to you like on Instagram or something. Uh, yeah, I'm just thinking out loud. That's a really like a must see, I think.
For sure. Yeah, we can put that in the description. For
Absolutely.
anybody that's interested, I'll put that in the description. Where can people find you if they want to get some of your art?
Yeah. So my Instagram's the best way. So it's at Surraya, so SURRAYRAY _. So it's private right now, but you can add me up and or email, which is my first, middle, and last name. So SURRAYADAWNAZIZ@gmail.com. Yeah.
All right, find her there. Get some art. Get a jacket. I'm gonna get one. You should get one too.
Oh, Maddie.
Um,
just on just on that note though, I also like, before I forget to mention it, do like pay what you can Zoom dance sessions and dance classes. So it's like all levels, but like if you just want to move, like I did one for CMHA there, like a little like 4-week session thing. So I'm starting those up again, and it's just, yeah, pay what you can. You sign in once a week and you just like move with me, and we do like there's like, depends how many people sign up, but hopefully more than 3. And it's just like beginner choreo and just fun.
okay. And where can people find that again?
So that would be like, yeah, same thing, Instagram or email. Just if you're interested, message me on either of those, and I'm gonna, yeah, set up a Zoom
Sounds
soon.
like fun.
Yeah, it should be.
Well, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you, Maddie. Yeah, it's awesome. Appreciate it.
Is there anything you'd like to share, maybe for someone that's going through something like this before we wrap up? Anything you'd like to add?
Oh my gosh, yeah. I'll keep it short. There's a lot I could say. But the absolute main thing is don't lose hope, because it will feel like there is none, and it will feel like, others don't quite fully grasp how shitty or dark or down you are. And they might not, but if you have to hold on to the hope, because it can get better and it does get better, and reach out, main thing.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Ray. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Maddie. I'll see you tonight, eh?
See you tonight, at the comedy show. Chat soon.
Peace.